Okay, we're back live with another Between the Pages book chat, and today we have fantasy author Christopher Russell, and we're here to discuss his military fantasy book, Divinity's Twilight, Rebirth, the first book in the Divinity's Twilight series. And I'll turn it over to him now, and he can introduce himself, so take it away.
Thank you so much for having me, Miss Stewart. The first thing I want to show you guys is this awesome physical book. Bring it up here into the camera. This is Divinity's Twilight Rebirth. You have a picture of the male and female heroes. They're on the front. There's the spine. There's the rear. You can pick this up currently through my website, ChristopherRussellAuthor.com. And then you can get the ebook on Amazon. The ebook launch was June 2nd, and the physical launch in stores is going to be September 22nd of this year. And the basic premise is that it asks the question, what if the heroes of legend didn't save the world, but only delayed the inevitable? And the prologue takes place 700 years before the events of the rest of the story, and the world very clearly isn't destroyed, it's saved, but the question is to what degree? That you had these three great heroes that went on to found nations based upon their ideologies, but they're constantly in conflict. They all have differing versions of what they think peace should be. And one of them, a evil that was buried away at the great battleground of this world, Harmouth, isn't buried as deeply as everyone thinks and is going to come back and cause a whole lot of trouble in the present. And the primary portion of the story follows a group of military cadet protagonists that they think that they're going to be serving during an era of peace, focusing just on their own lives, their own selfish whims, or what ambitions or goals they might have. A lot of that gets into spoilers, but eventually they're going to be caught up in this conflict that has cosmic ramifications that have been stewing for millennia. So there's a lot of great mythological things going on, a lot of technology. My background is in aerospace and mechanical engineering, so you have wonderful airship battleships that fly through the sky. You have a hard magic magtech system that is based around magical resources called Illyrium and Illyrite. And then you also have what people can do themselves. There's a lot of elemental magic. There are 10 different schools of magic thought that we go into. So a lot of great in-depth world building. You can read reviews about it on my website or Amazon, and we're getting a lot of great feedback on the world building. So it's been a really exciting process. The last thing I want to mention is that I have a cover contest entry going on right now at allauthor.com. And you can either go to my Facebook or my website to get a link to that. But the cover by Chris McGrath, illustrator of the Dresden Files, is currently in the running to enter the final round. So if we win that, we're going to get a great publicity package for his work, and we're going to be able to get a lot more people to see that. Great visibility. Turn it back over to you.
Okay, well, it sounds like an interesting book. So what were your inspirations for writing the book?
So there's a lot of different inspirations. I'd probably cite my two critical ones. Let's start with Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Apt. Have you ever heard of that series?
No, I have not.
So Adrian Tchaikovsky, epic fantasy, he's published through Tor, but he's not as well known as, say, the top of Tor, Brandon Sanderson, or a few other prominent epic fantasy authors. But his premise for Shadows of the Apt was, what if we had two different groups of people, the apt and the inapt? And the apt are great with using technology, different mechanisms. Whether it be something as simple as opening a doorknob or hefting a crossbow and being able to draw the string and attach a bolt. And then the inapt on the other side are great at magic, but if they were to touch any of these devices, they wouldn't know how to use them, that it's just not something their brain can comprehend. And so I thought to myself, well, that sounds a lot like what I do in engineering, that you have technology that is the foundation for your society, for different advancements. And so you see how the introduction of the crossbow, then the snap bow and gunpowder, and then various other things throughout his series affects a world that is gradually departing from magic, that it's leaving magic in the dust. And I thought that that would be something that I wanted to port over and give maybe a steampunk or a arcane punk veneer to. It's funny that I mentioned veneer. The veneer are actually demigods in my world. They're part of the mythology. So I constantly use that word. But the other part of my inspiration was probably Star Wars, that I have read almost every book from the old extended universe. And I just love the different battleships, the Star Destroyers, the Mon Calamari cruisers, the Nebula B frigates. I could go on and on about all the nerdy, geeky stuff, the starfighters. And I just thought, well, what if I take that and I come to a midpoint between fantasy and sci-fi? Then instead of it being in a galaxy and in space, that we bring it down to the atmosphere. And so you're going to have these different fleets, these different great warships and dreadnoughts flying over the surface of my world, Lazaria, at thousands of meters. Again, I'm an engineer, so I have to use the metric system and start to get more fantasy readers engaged with the metric system. But there's easy conversions.
I'm from Canada, so the metric system's fine with me.
Absolutely. It's far easier. Whenever I was doing engineering stuff and they wanted us to use British units or American units and convert between the two, it just didn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's when I'm doing stuff from American to Canada. Yeah, you got to convert all the time. So yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But so you mentioned your world and you have 3 kingdoms. Can you describe a little bit about how you've set it up?
So the 3 kingdoms are the 3 Terran kingdoms, and Terrans are viewpoint. They are humans, and you're going to get perspectives of other races. But my other races, there's 6 of them for 7 total races, and 7 Veneer, 1 demigod that was placed above each of them. And it's representative of their race, like the ideal for their race. And so these 3 kingdoms are the Terran kingdoms, representing the 3 brothers from mythology, from legend, that were in this final conflict. The 2 of them, Darmatus and Raban, ended up fighting against the 3rd, Sarkhan, because they all had differing versions of peace. Sarkhan believed that using the sword was the best way to achieve peace, because if you had a single ruler, that naturally everyone else would fall in line, that you would cut through red tape and bureaucracy. The middle brother, Darmatus, focused on compromise, knowledge, and basically agreement between people, that if everyone understood the differing opinions of each other, that they would be able to reach a common ground, that there would be some sort of agreement that they could come to. And then the youngest brother believed that economic prosperity and innovation would lead to peace, that if everyone was so busy chasing their dreams and building these great technologies, improving life for each other, and expanding upon their agrarian society, their very feudal society, and building it up from there, that you would have peace. And so the 2 younger brothers were forced to unite against the 3rd, along with the rest of the races, to prevent the destruction of Lazaria. And at his defeat, that they were forced to give up their lives in order to basically seal what was known as the Oblivion Well, his final attempt at eradicating all life and reducing everything to 0 so that you could begin again. And the 3 nations of the Terrans are founded upon this. They share those original beliefs in what will constitute peace, what's going to bring about order. And the 2 biggest ones, the Sarkonian Empire and the Raban Imperium, named after their progenitors, have been in conflict for almost that entire 700-year span, with the 3rd kingdom, the Kingdom of Dalmatia, trying to act as a balance between the 2, a mediator. If you think about the 3 Kingdoms era of China, that was a big inspiration, that they were constantly trying to ensure balance so that nobody would win. No one would be able to ascend to the imperial throne. And it's a similar concept that you have here. But something's going to be thrown into the mix that's going to destroy the balance.
Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about your protagonist?
So my protagonist, you have the main one, Valen Metellus, and he is what is known as the 2nd Triaran. The 1st Triaran was Darmatus, the hero king Darmatus from the 700 years past history. And the Triaran is capable of wielding all different types of elemental magics and utilizing them without saying a verbal incantation, that there's nothing to give away what he's going to do next. And he's also able to use any type of weapon to cast that magic, including his body to a limited degree. So he can project an electric field around himself to divert projectiles. He can cast flame or wind from a sword or a staff or various other, a glaive, whatever weapon he chooses to use. He's also able to, by touching the ground with a weapon, be able to eject pillars of earth at different places. So your classic elemental spells. But he has a past that he hides from everybody else. He's the adopted son of the Kingdom of Dalmatia's current steward. That the Kingdom of Dalmatia hasn't had a monarch for 100 years because of events in their history. The last great war, the Queen Ophelia, the last of the royal line, was killed. And so they've had an elected representative that's elected every 10 years, along with a council of overseers managing things. And Valen is at this military academy. He's there because his adopted father wants him to be there, but he'd rather live a life of indolence and dissipation, that he wants to drown his previous miseries that the audience doesn't know about. You have the second character pictured on the cover, Celeste Farkos. She's a scholarship student from the Raban Imperium. That the way the Dalmatian Military Academy works is that people, since it's neutral, officers can come from everywhere to study there. And it's an ideal place because it's removed from direct conflict for those 4 years that you're there, very much like a college in either the United States or Europe or wherever you're going to school. But so she is a tactician, great at strategy, great at thinking through things. She wields conjuration magic, that she's able to summon daggers from the ether and then control their trajectories. And that's all she's able to do at the moment, but it's hinted that she might be able to do more. And so she's very efficient, very logical, calculating, tends to be very brash and brusque, views other people as stepping stools to her ambitions, that nobody really knows what those ambitions are at the start of the book. But then the rest of the cadets, the third one that basically rounds out your primary cast is Mateo Alhan, and he's not pictured on the cover. But he is an incorrigible coward, that he wanted to be like his storybook heroes that he read about growing up. He has 2 surviving parents. They were, which is strange for a fiction protagonist, very supportive. They want him to get the best education he could, but they're decidedly middle class. His father runs a shipping industry. And so they have a canal where they ship things, and then there's also a few airships that they have. And so he grew up in a decent background and was able to read all these different things. And he idolized people that weren't like him, people that were bold and brave, that chased after their dreams, that wanted to bring about justice and virtue, that saved others. And that's why he went to the Dalmatian Military Academy. And despite him passing the physical exams, despite him going through a boot camp essentially before getting into the academy, just so that he could build up his physical strength, he's still not certain what he's going to do once he's leading men and women. That the Dalmatian military is there equal opportunity, that there's gender equality across the board, that their principal instructor, Major Reeve, is pretty high up in the military echelon. And so she's a very powerful, sort of even though Dalmatia hasn't gone to war, but a modern day hero for basically saving a whole bunch of people from a shipping accident. And so you have those 3 that are your primary characters, but there's a lot of other cadets that support them. There is a red-skinned sylph, Velisara Miandara. She just goes by her core name, Vel. You have a hulking Hue, which are essentially 4-armed giants that are blue, that oppose the sylph. There's a whole lot of dynamics going on between them, that their states are bordered on each other. You have the son of the current academy commandant, Raynar Aeolus, who is he was very much a one-note character to begin with, but he eventually overcomes that through the story. He was like a Tolkien Malfoy, to use Harry Potter as an example. But there's a whole lot of different personalities that you're going to have in this 8-person cast that is going to be our primary group going through the series.
Okay, so obviously there's going to be conflict in the story. It's a military fantasy. So can you tell us a little bit about the threat to our heroes or the antagonist?
Well, the story is originally presented as a very gray story, that everyone is trying to do what's best for their nation. The cadets are nominally attached to the King of Dalmatia, and therefore that's our protagonist's point of view, though they could at any point in time cut their ties with the kingdom and go back to their home militaries. Some of them choose to do that, some of them don't. But eventually, these characters are going to be thrown into the turmoil of war because of the threat that I mentioned, that an ancient evil is going to be resurrected and choose a side among these three nations that's going to upset the balance of power. And so everyone, Matteo, who doesn't want to go to war, Valen, who just wants to keep living a life of basically selfishness, of drowning himself in pleasure, and then Celeste, who has ambitions beyond simply graduating, that all of them are going to have to make decisions on what they want once the conflict starts.
Okay, so what's the hardest type of scene for you to write in the book?
Not a question that I've really considered. I'd probably say times when you're not at a 10, so to speak, when the action isn't flowing and flying, when your characters are just leaning back, relaxing, having a moment of rest in between, because those are very important, that you have to bring your readers down, that you can't have them flying by the seat of their pants at all times. And so I'd say that probably those character beats, those interludes, just whether it be shopping for supplies, or that you're having a discussion about what to do next, or a few people are having a relationship moment, that some sort of tension, whether it be romantic, whether it be friendship. I love a good friendship in fantasy, so there's a lot of that develops between the characters. But I'd say that it's the stuff not dealing with the politics, not dealing with mythology or world building, that is the most difficult.
Okay, so what's your favorite scene from the book, or your favorite type of scene that you've written in the book?
My favorite type of scene probably is it tends to be tragic, whether it's a self-sacrificial moment for a character, or a point where they overcome their trepidations and fears in order to do what they've always been called to do, to not necessarily to achieve their destiny, but just to protect their friends, to do what's right for either their group or for a community or the world. And I think my favorite scene overall, it deals with spoilers for a character's backstory, but it's that moment of realization that everything you thought you knew about your society, it may be a lie, that there's an entirely different perspective, that you may have been at the top of that institution, but there's somebody much lower on the rung that's been oppressed by it, that is dealing with social ills, and that you suddenly experience that yourself, and you have to do a reevaluation of your priorities, of what you want to do within the bounds of that institution. And so there's one character that is forced to confront that because of something that happens to someone very close to them, and it's a very moving scene. I've had early readers say that they cried themselves senseless on it, that they wanted to throw the book across the room because they were so attached to the characters, but very visceral reactions.
Well, that's always good, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your favorite character in the book?
Celeste Farkos on the cover. That she and I share that very logical, calculating mindset. But aside from that, she's very different from how I am. I'm very polite. I'm very put together. I tend to be somewhat modest, except for when I go on a show like this and I'm supposed to talk about my work. And she's the exact opposite. She's going to let people know why she's the girl for the job, why she's very brusque. She can be scathing towards people. She can be very quick to point out their flaws or to correct them. She's a leader, takes charge very quickly, that she's going to hop to the front and try to line everybody up behind her because she has a goal that she's working towards, and that everybody else is going to be a tool to help her reach that goal.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap it up here. If you want to tell everybody where they can find you in your books and any works that you have upcoming, go right ahead.
So again, the best place to find my work is ChristopherRussellAuthor.com. With Russell, that's 2 S's and 2 L's. The next best place is Amazon. The ebook is currently discounted at $5.99. You're also going to be able to get the physical copies in September. It's going to be in Barnes & Noble. It's going to be in various other stores throughout the U.S. I know with Amazon Prime, you're going to be able to get the ebook or the physical copies anywhere in the world for Prime shipping, so that's a great option. There's also Book Repository, there's bookshop.org, there's a whole bunch of different options. I've been told by my small press publisher, Morgan James, that the ebook is on 1,800 different platforms. So if you type Divinity's Twilight into Google, you should be able to find it. But if you want a signed copy, the only place you can go to that for is ChristopherRussellAuthor.com. And there's another promo on that right now if you want to check out the website.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here today. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
No problem. Pleasure chatting with you as well. This has been fun.
Okay, and Between the Pages Book Chat, we'll be back tomorrow with another author. And so that's it for today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.